Welcome and thank you for joining us for another episode of Catholicism Unwrapped. I'm Father Vogel.
And I'm Father Bierman.
In this episode, we will be talking with Dan Hamlet about his new book, Through the Eye of the Needle.
Through the Eye of the Needle, Can I Get to Heaven If I Have Money? Is a simple, practical guide to how to think about money. Here it is. And investing when you know that you are a steward of God's gifts, not an owner. Author Dan Hamlet has more than 15 years of experience helping people invest their money, but only in the last few years has he really delved into helping people invest their money with their faith in mind. We are your hosts, Father Andy the Greater and Father Andy the Lesser.
Buckle up, we've got a lot to cover. This is Catholicism Unwrapped.
Okay, welcome, Dan.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Your background, do you want to share that?
Sure. So I've
Go ahead.
The most important thing to know about me is I'm married with 7 children. And
That is
my primary vocation.
Yes, amen.
And I've got a BA and a master's in business from the University of Dallas, which is a very solid Catholic university, extremely well known in Catholic circles. I was a Marine in the early 90s. I'm in the Army Reserve now. I'm a lieutenant colonel in the Army Reserve. Like the bio said, thank you for that, by the way. I've been a financial advisor for 15 years. About 4 or 5 years ago, I discovered that it was possible to help my clients invest in a faith-based way. And so I started getting into faith-based investing. And then I discovered a certification called the Certified Kingdom Advisor. And I thought, I'm a good Catholic, a good Christian man. Pat myself on the back there. So I'm going to take this certification, breeze through it, and put the initials on my business card and drive on. But the studying what the Bible teaches about money and business and wealth shattered my worldview. It transformed me. It changed me in ways that I'm still unpacking 3 years later.
So what would you say led you to this shift in your job or your position? Were you kind of like forced into it, or?
No, it was the company I was working for at the time made it available that we could hold this extra certification.
Okay.
And so as soon as I heard that and I looked down the list of all the 20 or 30 different certifications they were supporting, that one leapt out at me. I went and prayed about it. Had a very clear signal. Yeah, this is what you're supposed to do. So I spent the next 8 months studying. It's very intense certification. And I started with skepticism, like, I'm an ED grad. I've got this. And I realized just how much there is in the Bible. There's over 2,500 passages in the Bible that talk about money, wisdom about money and wealth and investing. 200 of those are warnings, which means there's 2,300 or more that are not warnings. They're guides.
Yeah, I mean, not to get us off track right away, but I was kind of surprised in your book that we're reviewing too, Through the Eye of the Needle. You do mention numbers, how many times Jesus mentions money, and I knew it was a lot because you do have people say Father, you talk about money all the time, or every time I come to church, it's about money. It's
right.
Well, Jesus talked about money a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
If you think about money as just a measure of economic activity, well, we were given a job. The very first thing that happened when God created Adam is he said, now tend and keep the garden.
Yes.
He had a job.
Yeah.
Right? In other words, work is holy. It's not, there's this idea out there that work is somehow a punishment for the fall. No, the work came before the fall.
Yeah.
And so if economic activity is a measure of the productivity, the faithfulness of your work, that means that your work is a holy activity, or it can be.
Yes. Yeah.
And if you do it prayerfully, and if you do it with the intent of serving the kingdom and serving God and serving his creation, work is beautiful and work is holy and work is powerful way to love God and love his creation.
I mean, I guess I hung out with, pastors for like 2-3 years in college, but I don't know if I have a good sense of what they think, but like in the Catholic understanding, like, yeah, there's a huge dignity to work, right? That, whether that's, Catholics standing up for workers' rights in the Industrial Revolution and things like that. But yeah, the church has always seen work as part of the dignity of man, that the goal is not to sit on a beach,
Right.
in Hawaii, 365 days a year. The goal is like, how do I contribute to the good of the world, to God's kingdom here on earth in a way that, uses my talents, but also adds to the good of humanity.
Yeah. And so if our work can be good, we also have free will. And so that means that work can be bad too, because we make it bad. In other words, we can be sinful about work, or we can be faithful about work. And so that's a large part of what was revealed to me. I thought of work as something neutral.
Yes. Okay.
Right. And it's not. There's nothing neutral about work.
Yeah.
Yeah. The punishment for sin is that work is toilsome.
Mm-hmm.
That is by sweat of your brow. But there was work before that already, in which it was a joy and a delight. And there are people who would say that about their job. I enjoy it. And I don't even feel like I should be paid. I enjoy doing this so much.
Right. And
that is a sense of the goodness of work.
Absolutely. And you can love your customers. You can love your coworkers. You can love your vendors. You can love the work itself. I mean, you can love the process of working with your hands and your brain. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good attitude about work, if you can achieve it.
Yeah. Maybe backing up a little bit, the title and the first part of the book, I thought was very interesting. So explain what the title of your book means.
All right. So Through the Eye of the Needle, can I get to heaven if I have money? That is it's a parable that we all have heard.
Oh yeah.
And the common takeaway is that, no, a camel can't get through the eye of the needle. That's impossible. What a silly thing. And there's been a lot of different interpretations of what Jesus was talking about through the ages. But it gets at the heart of stewardship, and what is the purpose of stewardship, and what is a relationship that we should have with our work, with our money, with our wealth.
Yeah.
We were just talking about this before the episode, but there's this a footnote in the Bible what Father Bierman was quick to point out that I in the book I talk about. In ancient times, there were these giant gates in the walls of cities, and then there would be this little tiny pedestrian door either next to or in the big door, and the nickname for these was Eye of the Needle. And so, if a merchant's coming up with a camel to come to the market in the city, and that camel's all fully loaded up, and it tries to get through that little pedestrian door, it can't. It's too tall and it's too wide. But if the master unloads it and allows itself to be unloaded, then now it's not too wide, but it's still too tall. And so then it has to kneel on a board or a cloth, and then the master pulls the camel through the door. Right? So it's a beautiful image, and it's the argument is that it was a colloquialism of the time of Jesus, and when he said this, it immediately conjured that image in the minds of his audience, and they understood what he was saying. But the Bible footnote says, be careful of that interpretation. And so let's go another direction. Say we're talking about that Jesus was talking to us in modern times, and we know quantum mechanics. Right? And you could have a lot of fun with that. But the idea is that it's still impossible for man. And so the very next line at the end of the parable is, for man, all is impossible. Or this is impossible, but for God, anything is possible. And so the sort of punchline to Through the Eye of the Needle, can I get to heaven? The answer is no.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
By yourself, you can't. There's nothing. And it's not that it's harder well, it's not that poor people can get to heaven and rich people can't.
Right.
It's that it's harder for rich people. And so a lot of the book is unpacking why is it harder?
Yeah.
The reason is attachment. Because when you have a lot of good things and you have a lot of comfort and you don't have a lot of fear and you don't have to rely on God for the next month's food, well, it's a whole lot easier to become attached to things, and it's a whole lot harder to let them go and become detached from them and allow the master to unload you and to kneel in front of the master and to go through the gate.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder for rich people to trust God. And so that's the punchline.
Yeah, and I told people too that people who are rich, they think they're self-sufficient materially. So this says like, oh, maybe I'm self-sufficient spiritually. And whereas a poor person is like, I know I'm not self-sufficient materially. It's probably a good chance that I'm not self-sufficient spiritually. And so, but I think that's kind of speaking to what you're talking about too. It's just this sense that, pride or whatever, like we could do this on our own. And so if I'm wealthy, like it's that much harder for me to rely on God.
When I grew up doing a little bit of mission work, and my wife and I have done mission work together. And one of the things that, whenever I'm talking to someone else who's also done mission work, one of those points of like, oh yeah, you too, yeah, I noticed this, is that you meet people that have way less than we take for granted.
Oh, yeah.
And they have joy. And in fact, in some ways, it feels like they have more joy
than we do. Yeah.
And I don't know if that's in absolute terms or if that's in contrast to the, we're seeing like they have so much less than we do, less security, less food, less everything. And yet their joy level is at least as high, but probably a lot higher than ours. Why is that? And so that's a question that makes you start thinking about, what are we missing as a society, as a civilization? Yeah. What can we learn about the importance that money has in our life, really?
Yeah.
We think it's important, but is it?
In Matthew's gospel, he says, blessed are the poor in spirit, but in Luke's, it's just blessed are the poor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think that you can just say, strictly speaking, it's blessed to be poor. Like if you are poor, you will be happy. It's not necessarily the case, as you would say.
No. I mean, I've met people who are not happy.
They can still be attached to money, even if they don't have any.
Right.
But there is something true about mission work. Like I've seen exactly what you're talking about, that these people on the hills of the poorest part of Lima, Peru are some of the happiest people I've ever met.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But most joyful.
Yeah.
People that I've ever met.
And they're content with what they have in a way that
in some ways not even
confusing to the
end, but like they are willingly giving us food and like sharing what little they have. And we're like, wait, like, should you say this for your own? It's like, but it's just like this generosity and this joy that is so readily given away.
My uncle was an all-star football player in Texas when he was in high school, and he went on one of these mission trips to the mountains in Mexico, and this family served a chicken, and he grabbed it, pulled it to himself, and he started eating it. Well, that was for the whole table of like 8 people. But they gave their last chicken, and they didn't complain as he ate the whole chicken.
My gosh.
Yeah, but there's a joy, a generosity that it's hard to see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So the question of freedom of detachment. Now I think what you would be saying is, though, you don't necessarily have to be poor to get to heaven.
No, you don't. And I think that the reason why, one of the reasons why I wrote this book, because I've been in economic development and in investing for a long time, and the amount of wealth in the world is dramatically increasing, very dramatically. 200 years ago, most of 80% or more of the world lived in what today we call extreme poverty. And this is based on census data from the United Nations. And today, the percentage of people living in extreme or abject poverty by UN definitions is under 10%. Yeah. So we've gone from 80% of the world in extreme poverty to 10%. And extreme poverty is that is if anyone's ever read Little House on the Prairie, it's Ma and Pa angles, it's dirt floors, it's food insecurity. Mm-hmm. When harvests are good, then you eat well, but when harvests are bad, is it my turn to eat, Mom?
Right. And living in a shack.
And living in shacks and rain barrels and all of the hardships that come with that. And so we didn't call that poverty 200 years ago. That was just a human condition.
Yes.
And that, if you look back over history, that line doesn't move much for all of human history. So something happened 200 years ago. And if we believe that the Holy Spirit, which we do, that the Holy Spirit's in control of this, the Holy Spirit allowed a change to come into the world through our economic systems. And there's a new lesson happening. And so I wrote this book to try to at least take an initial crack at what's changing and why is this important? Because today, 200 years ago, less than 0.1% of the population was middle class or higher. Today it's 15%. And that number is growing so rapidly. The number of people in extreme poverty dropped in half in the last 20 years. That's a mind-blowing number. And as Christians, that's an exciting thing. It's a really powerful thing to say, you mean in either my lifetime or my child's lifetime, we could eradicate poverty in the world? What an incredible thing.
Right.
But that's why this title is important, because it's an incredible thing to get rid of poverty. But if it's harder to get into heaven if you're wealthy, we've got some work to do. We've got to teach people how to have wealth and not be owned by it.
Yeah.
How to have wealth and be able to be detached from it so that we can get into heaven.
Yeah. So if poverty is decreasing, but the amount of souls getting into heaven is decreasing or whatever, like that's in some ways not a good thing.
That's not a good thing.
Yeah.
Right. And so money's bad. No, that's not the point.
Yeah.
Right? So
the love of money is
the love of money is the root of evil. Money is not evil. Money is a tool.
Yeah, I guess if you look through the scriptures, you'll see there are people who are wealthy that follow Jesus, like Joseph of
Arimathea.
And they're wealthy.
Yeah, no, I point that out a lot to people.
Yeah, there's a lot of saints too who were wealthy, like kings and queens, but they use their wealth in service to others.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of one of the main themes of your book, I think.
Right. And it's what's important is our relationship with the money.
Yeah, so you talk about the line between an owner and being a steward. So what does stewardship mean for a Catholic, or it should mean for a Catholic?
Right. Psalm 24, the very first line of Psalm 24 is, "The world is the Lord's and everything in it." And in other words, stewardship begins with the recognition that I came into the world naked. And I'm going out of the world naked. I can't take any of this with me. This is not really mine. That means that I am in charge of it for a time. And the all throughout the Bible, there's discussions of stewardship in the sense that the parable of the 3 talents, or the parable of the talents talks about the 3 stewards. And there's lots of parables throughout and discussions about what is a steward. A steward is someone who controls the wealth of the master for the benefit of the master's goals.
Yeah.
So if we are stewards, then we have to know our master, which means we need to talk to him, and means we need to pray.
Yeah.
And we need to know what his intent is for that money. Now, he's a loving God and a generous God, and he's given us what he's given us first to provision for our first vocation. To care for our spouse, to care for our children and our grandchildren, and to provide a good life for them. That's our first job with that money. But as we grow wealthier as a society, there's more and more people that are being gifted with more than that. And we can either view that as through the lens of ownership. This is mine, and it allows me to have more stuff. Or we can view it through the lens of stewardship. Master, you gave me this for my family. You gave me more. Who or what am I carrying this for? What is your intent with it? And so that's the key question as a steward, is to ask God, why?
Yeah, I like how you oppose those two questions, which is, you may have to refresh me on this. How much is enough, or how much do I need?
Right. How much do I need is a question that says, I want to live like this. How much do I need to live like this? And if I have more, that means I can afford to live with more. I can spend more. And
so that's the ownership.
That's the ownership view. And one of the traps there is that there is always more to spend money on. There is an unlimited options for where to spend money. But if you ask how much is enough, then you're what's implied in that question is, I've sat down, maybe prayerfully with my spouse, and we've said, what is the lifestyle we're called to? What does that look like? We've shaped it, we've defined it, and then we drew box around it. We drew lines around it. And it allows us to recognize what of God's generosity has he provided for that life.
Yeah.
And then what else is there? And it allows us to recognize the extra burden or the extra responsibility that God has placed on us with these assets, with the extra money, the extra income, extra wealth, etc.
I mean, I had a deacon recently. It's like, he's like, yeah, I don't want any more. I was like, do you want us to increase your gas stipend or whatever? He's like, no, if you do, it'll increase the taxes I have to pay. But I guess you go from one category to the next. But just that sense, like, he had, like how what you talked about, he had in mind, like, I'm, like, this is enough. Like, I have enough. I don't need to stretch to the next lifestyle of living or whatever, right? Like, he's content with the lifestyle that he has.
Right. You don't need the bigger house. You don't necessarily need the bigger car. And if you have more money and it's the world's way, then, well, I have more money, so now I can get that bigger car. But you didn't stop to ask the question, do I need it?
Yeah.
Do I even want it? Yeah. No, it's the next thing to do because I have that much more money.
So then the question is, the stewardship is, what do I do with extra and left over?
Right. And there's a couple of different things that you can do that are holy uses of money. One is give it away. The other is concentrate it to help build the kingdom. Right. And that's investing. So that means that there is a moral dimension to investing. Right? Because if you're going to concentrate wealth and invest it in a company, that it needs to be something that will advance the kingdom, that will improve the lives of clients, provide good jobs and support families, that will provide good living for vendors, and that will be responsible in the use of the resources of the world. So, because the initial charge in the garden was to till and to keep, right? So that to till is to make it more fruitful, right? So companies are making the word more fruitful. To keep is to preserve and protect this gift that we've been given of the world. And so investing has to be intentional, and we can talk about that when we get to the church's teaching on how to invest. But so you want to invest intentionally or give it away. And that we get to the concept of almsgiving.
Yes.
Right? There's two ways you can give. One is immediately and directly to the need you see right in front of you, whether it's a poor person, someone whose house burned down, whatever the need is that the Holy Spirit moves you to give immediately and directly. And the other is to store it up for bigger needs later. And that's when you get into the concept of philanthropy. Every hospital, the entire hospital system of the world was created by the Catholic Church. And it wasn't created by immediate giving. It was created by planned, careful accumulation of wealth to achieve bigger, harder things. And it sounds like, that's a hard work. And that is part of the work of tending the garden. And the wealthy are called to do that work. That's part of the work that wealthy are called to, that your average person maybe isn't. And it's a challenge.
You mean like endowments where they can use the interest?
Endowment. So the modern tools that we use are endowments, family foundations, donor advised funds. It was a lot of different types of tools that you can use, different kinds of trusts where you can accumulate wealth for the purpose of doing kingdom work, of giving to capital campaigns, to building nonprofits and hospitals and schools and so on.
Yeah, I guess maybe going back to this is all under the aspect of faith and our relationship with God. So the notion of tithing that you brought up in the book, and how that was present in the Old Testament and even in the New, and we may not hear about it so much in our church today, but I think it's still a very good practice.
I think most Catholics and Christians today misunderstood tithing for most of my life. First of all, I conflated tithing and almsgiving. I think those are two completely separate ways to use money. All right. I think they're and they involve two separate movements of the soul. Tithing, from the time of Cain and Abel, we're taught to give back to the master, give back to God the first fruits of all the gifts that he's given us, of all of our increase. And you look at the story of Cain and Abel, and Abel gave his best and Cain gave something. And Abel's gift was accepted and Cain's wasn't. It wasn't about what God needed. It was about what Cain needed to do and what Abel needed to do. Abel did it and Cain didn't. And which tells us that, and there's other passages in the Bible where God says, I don't need your sacrifices. I don't need your burnt offerings, your burnt bulls. If I was hungry, all the bulls are mine. I just go get one. Right? Yeah. But he didn't say, don't give me the offerings, which suggests that giving of the offering is not for God's benefit. It's for our benefit.
Yes.
So if you understand that, then you understand that tithing at church is not because the church needs it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
The church is the receiver of us giving to God. So we give back to God, to the master who owns it all, the first fruits, the best of all the gifts he's given us. And the attitude that we should have for that is gratitude. God, thank you for all these gifts. Here's back the first fruits, the best part. And, St. Paul says, set that aside on Monday. Don't wait till Saturday. In other words, even in an income-based environment like we're in now versus a harvest-based environment of an agrarian society, we can do this every week. It's not about the church's need. And then, I think we've all sat on stewardship committees where the first thing that comes out is the church's need, the budget. And I think that's a mistake. I think that a stewardship program should be about breaking the power of money over us so that we can recognize that we're stewards, not owners.
Yeah.
And the budget meeting should happen 6 months later, in an open meeting in the church hall. For anyone who's curious, it should not be linked to stewardship at all, because I don't think it's what that's on.
And do you have personal stories? I mean, I've heard a lot about families that decide to tithe, which is giving 10% of their income, and how God provides for them. Like a lot of times you'll hear no, I need this money to make ends meet. I can't just give it away. But there's something more to the whole equation, which is God and his care for us and providence.
Yeah. And several places in the Bible, God says, I will not be outdone in generosity. Malachi.
Yes.
Right.
And we've experienced that in our lives when Jennifer and I crossed the 10% line. I don't know what it is about 10%. In the Old Testament, God said, you will do 10%. It was a command.
Yeah.
And why 10%? I don't know, but there's something in that command where if you get to that 10% of tithe, something shifts in our brains. I think there's something in us that moves from ownership to stewardship naturally if we're giving in the right attitude. Could that happen at 7% or 12%? Who knows, right? There's plenty of anecdotes around that. Yeah. But are you giving your first fruits? Are you giving with the recognition that you're not giving from your money? You're giving back to the master what's his.
Yeah. And what he gave you.
And what he gave me. And so it's a recognition that it's not mine. It breaks the power of money over us. It breaks the power of ownership. And I think that that's the prerequisite. I think that we need to tithe. And then every client I've ever talked to that I've finally helped nudge above that 10% line comes back a few months later and says, you're right. I was worried, and things just work. If he can multiply loaves and fishes, then he can certainly help make my budget. And it's not a prosperity gospel thing because Malachi says, bring your tenth, bring your tithe into my storehouses, and I will open the heavens and rain down blessings. Those raining down of blessings, maybe it's material, maybe it's not. Maybe it's other blessings. Maybe your relationship with your children gets better. But there will be blessings. There will be some reward. And in Malachi, he actually promises that. He says that explicitly.
Yeah, I think you could compare that to just the eye of the needle, the impossibility of this. When you tithe, you would say that's impossible. And I'm going to make ends meet. But so it breaks that understanding.
You have stories, I'm sure. Do you have parishioners that have hit that 10% or hit a point where they made that transition and their life changed?
There was a family in Wichita that I heard the story of. That they gave 10% of their income. They had a business, and it was I think it was $700 a month at that time. And at one point, their business started to lose money. They weren't doing so well, so they didn't pay their tithe. The next month, they were really losing money in dire straits. And then the third month, they were on the verge of bankruptcy and having to shut things down. And so what did he do? He went to the bank and took out a loan for $2,100 so he could pay
catch up his tithe
to the church. And then after that, everything just turned around and they were fine again after that.
And because
that's an act of faith, though.
There are so many stories, and you have to be careful not to have it trip over into a formula where if I put money into the church, God's going to give me money back. I mean, that's not the point. But the point is that God will not be outdone in generosity.
That's right.
And that those blessings will flow, whether it's material or it's what you need.
There's a lot of times too where people have come to the door asking for money, and I've helped them with my own money, like out of my own pocket.
Right.
And then I win the raffle later on.
You do win lots of church raffles. This is a fact.
That's very generous.
There is material benefits.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, we can't outdo the Lord in generosity.
You cannot outdo the Lord in generosity. So tithing versus almsgiving. So tithing is a movement of the soul that is of recognition of God's mastery and ownership and of generosity. And the fruit of that is the spirit of the steward.
Yes.
There. Almsgiving is something completely different. It doesn't necessarily go to the church. In fact, usually it doesn't. It's being the hands and the feet of the Holy Spirit in the world to do the work of the kingdom, to do the work of the Holy Spirit. And that's where we care for the poor. That's where we take care of the widow and the orphan and all the stories that we have. Now, as we get wealthier, it's not going to be widows and orphans. It's going to be addicts. It's going to be, there's going to be different poverties. It's not just financial poverty, because once financial poverty is wiped out, there's be plenty of other poverties, and we'll start to, I think, see
people with loneliness.
Loneliness is such a massive one.
You also mentioned the tithing of your time, which I thought was quite interesting. Like to give the time to God in prayer, which comes out to 96 minutes a day, and even there, I think that's a beautiful concept of saying, I'm taking 10% of my time to give to the Lord. And you know, in the book, you kind of described the change that made in your life when you tried to do that.
It fixed everything. My marriage is stronger. My relationship with my children is stronger. And my work life was stronger. And it wasn't just that I was spending the time. It's that I did it first thing in the morning. I gave my most productive time. I was giving the first fruits of my time.
Yeah.
Now, the tithing of time is not explicitly a biblical concept.
But it kind of follows.
It follows. There's a logic to it. And I mean, we're really called to, as St. Paul says, pray without ceasing. But how do you get there? Well, you start by tithing your time. You start by doing at least a 10% of your time where you're explicitly, deeply in contemplative prayer. Go into adoration. So my habits, when I started studying for the Kingdom Advisor, and then when I started the business I had and started writing the book, I started going to adoration every morning for at least half an hour on the way to work. I mean, when you're self-employed, you can do that.
Nice.
But and I would take my to-do list in there, and I'd say, okay, God, here's my to-do list for work today. Reorder it, because this is your company, not mine. This is my schedule with the kids, and there's conflicts here. Reorder it, because they're your kids, not mine. And so I had to give everything to God: my children, my marriage, my business, my wealth. And I feel so much more joy. I feel so much freer. And I've had, you know, every client that I have that comes to me that wants to be a steward or wants to work with me because I recognize their stewardship. A lot of them are way ahead of me on this journey. But to have an advisor that can hear that and is not going to tell them that their tithe is too high, which I would have done 7 years ago. Oh, you know, you're given 20%. You could do other things with that extra 10%, right? And so to have so they all report a lot of the same things that I'm talking about, that their marriages improved, their relationship with their kids, and you know, all these things improved when they gave their first fruits of their time and their prayer to God.
The to-do list reminds me, I was visiting my sister one time. This was a while back when they had little kids, but he had my brother-in-law had on his desk a to-do list, and it was like pay the bills, mow the lawn, do this and all that. And then one of the kids added number 6, play with the kids. So he didn't forget that.
But you do hear stories like that of people, of kids just saying that, like, you know, like dad thinking that he needs to like bring home another toy or whatever. Like he needs to work harder so he can bring more stuff, and so on, more stuff back to the family. And if you ask the kids, they're just like, no, I don't want another like gift from dad from his trip to Tokyo, you know, his business trip to Tokyo. I just want more time with dad.
Yeah. My kids see me praying more.
Yeah.
And they're like, Dad, you going to adoration? Can I come? And gosh, that has been a gift. And the conversations that come out of that are just incredible. And who knows, maybe there's be some vocations that come out of it.
You know? Yeah,
hopefully.
We'll pay for those. Yeah. Yeah. Little bias.
I threw that one in for free.
Okay, Matt.
So yeah, thanks. So all these things is pointing to like trusting more in God rather than in ourselves and in our wealth. You know, just the release of the worry that a lot of people have about, how am I going to make ends meet?
So I think we're a little long on time. And just so like, what are some practical first steps that people can take? I mean, 1, buy your book. 2, like, what are some practical things that we can do to change from to a stewardship,
from ownership to stewardship? Sit down with your budget, put 10% in, and take it into prayer. And let God tell you how much to give.
I love that.
Because the 10%, I don't know if that's an Old Testament was a commandment.
It was
a command in the Old Testament, and in the New Testament, we're told just to give with a loving heart, to give with love of the Lord. And there's no mention of any percentage, right? So I don't know if 10% is something that's hardwired into the way we were created as beings. If there's something that happens chemically, someone can study that someday. You know, if there's a neuroscientist out there who's Catholic that wants to figure out if 10% or at least some sort of
obvious.
Wouldn't it be fun? But I would say put the tithe in your budget and try it. But take it on as a challenge. Do it for at least 3 months and see what happens. Journal about it. Pray about it. But don't just do it as a spreadsheet exercise. Do it as a prayer exercise.
Okay.
Take that, put it on the spreadsheet, then take the spreadsheet because God invented spreadsheets.
Yeah, I've heard.
We seem to use lots of them.
I've heard stories of people saying, I have this bill here and I can't pay it. And they bring it into the church and put it on the altar and say, Lord, you said you would provide. Here it is. And then somehow
something happens.
They're given a gift or whatever, and they're able to pay it.
Everyday miracles. There's lots of them for sure. Yeah. I see them in my practice far more than I even recognize. And I see them in reflection afterwards. Like, oh, did I just witness another miracle? Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's just so good.
Yeah.
So, point your 10%. Pray with it, and you said stick to it for a couple of months.
Yeah, and that's not from the Bible. That's just Dan saying, give it a real shot. I'd say do it for a year, but if doing it once sounds scary, doing it 12 times sounds a lot scarier. So just do it 3 times, right? And then pay attention and pray about it every day, and see what happens, and see if your relationship with God doesn't change. And see if your relationship with your money doesn't change, and your attitude about it, and your trust.
Okay.
Once your stewardship heart's unlocked, your life will change. I've seen it over and over and over again, and I'm sure you as priests have seen it over and over again. When people surrender to the Lord, and the tithe is important because we are not just minds and spirits; we're also bodies. We have to, in an embodied way, take that money and put it in the basket. And don't worry about, well, the church scandal and this. You're not giving, the church is the recipient of it on behalf of God, but you're giving it to God. So don't worry about what's going on in the church. Don't worry about the Latin Mass and all the different arguments and fights that you can have with everything.
Yeah.
Because go past all that and give it to God through your church.
I mean, real quickly, like I was with the Focus recruitment weekend this past weekend, and that's one kind of like, I don't know, scary thing for people who are young men when we think of being Focus missionaries is like fundraising. I don't think of it as begging people or asking people for money. Like you're asking them to share in the mission that you're doing. I mean, they're like some of them are old curmudgeons. They would look really odd if they were walking around a college campus, asking like, what's your relationship with Jesus? Do you want to go to a Bible study? Do you want to go to Mass?
Yeah.
Like, they'd just be really awkward and weird. But they have been called to do that, or maybe called to do that. And they can invite, through investing in them, they can share in that mission that this young person is on.
When I was praying about this book, a prayer just dropped into my head, fully formed, and it's the prayer that
I loved it.
Called the camel prayer. Yeah. And one of the lines in there is that the gist of it is that it is not my generosity; it's God's generosity flowing through me.
Yes.
And so if you're a Focus missionary and you're raising money, you're asking for the Holy Spirit to poke that person.
Yes. Yes.
To release to recognize that some of what they're carrying is for the mission that you're asking them about. And then suddenly the missionary is not the person asking for the money. No, they're the recipient of the Holy Spirit. They just have to let the Holy Spirit have the opportunity to poke that person and say, this is who it's for.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if you're going to not give the Holy Spirit that opportunity, what's wrong with you? Right?
It's a good way of saying it.
Yeah. Did you want to say any more about estate planning?
Estate planning is an interesting corollary to all this, because if you don't own any of it, it's all the master's, and you're a steward.
Interesting.
Then what does that make your children? The next steward.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's something that you can take your estate plan into adoration or into prayer and say, okay, God, this is my list, reorder it. Just the same way as you can with your budget or with any your to-do list or anything. You will find that maybe the list that comes out is different. Maybe there are stewards that are not on that list, that are maybe not your children.
No.
Maybe you're called to support other stewards for the kingdom, that there's something else that you're called to support. And then there's the issue. This is actually one of my favorite pieces of this. We'll say, well, I've disowned this kid because they're a spendthrift and they're using drugs and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And there are two Bible passages that kind of come to bear on that. One is, what father, when his son asked for a fish, would give him a scorpion, right, or a snake? And in other words, no, you're not going to give your kids something that's going to go up their nose and kill them.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
On the one hand. On the other hand, there's the story of the prodigal son, where he gave half of his wealth to his kid, who he had to have known his kid's character.
Knowing that he's going to waste it.
And knowing that he was going to waste it and come back empty-handed, but he came back. And it was worth the cost of half of everything he owned for the salvation of that kid.
Yes.
And
yes,
both are legitimate ways to look at whether to take a kid off or keep them in your will, for example. How do you determine which one is the appropriate one for you? Take your list into prayer.
Yes, that's
right.
Yeah.
Right. And
that's like prayer in general. Like, God only gives us things that we ask for if it's truly good for us.
Right.
Sometimes we don't get what we ask because it's not going to be good for us. And
right.
So he can guide us in our prayer,
right,
to say, is this going to be truly good for my children, or
right.
maybe someone else?
Or will it cause some damage? And is there someone, who am I carrying this for, is the primary question. Yeah. Am I carrying this for my children? And there's an awful lot of my clients who say, no, they're going to get a little piece each, but most of it is going to go to do something else, whether it's to go to the shareholders of the business to make sure that business endures because it's supporting so many families, or it's going to go to, to support of favorite charities, or to the church, or school, but that shouldn't come from our pride. That should come from our obedience. And I think that
because you hear a lot of families that start fighting over the inheritance when their parents die, and they end up not speaking to each other and all that, and that's not a good outcome.
No. And so then being able to use that as witness to your kids, and communicate that early and often with your children, in a way that's. But it's one thing if you say, hey, my idea is to cut you all out of the will except for 10% to go to the kids and 90% is going to go to all the other causes. That's my idea. And then there's going to be a fight.
Right.
But if I say, no, I took this to prayer, suddenly it's God's idea. And it's way easier to break the bad news to kids if you blame God for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's higher God, right? I like that. That's a great tactic. It's not me, it's God. You're going to argue with God?
I think you mentioned the book though, like training them all along to be stewards so that they're prepared.
Right. So, the person who's reading this book, if they still have kids at home, then there's the opportunity to train them as stewards, and you set it up to where, if you give them an allowance, we had 7 kids. My kids don't get allowances. But if you're the family that gives an allowance, you say, okay, now let's give the first 10% to the church. And then set aside your alms money, and set aside your spending money, and you set aside your future goals money. And you can teach them how to be good stewards of that wealth.
Right.
not just, but bring that kingdom language into those lessons.
Yeah.
Right. And help them to understand that they're stewarding us for goals that are beyond themselves.
Yeah.
Bigger goals.
And
help them
get to prayer themselves.
And then say, okay, and then take that list to prayer. And then it's amazing because kids almost always will come back out with a list that's more generous than we thought maybe was right.
No.
Because kids do that.
Yes.
Sure, you might be giving exactly.
I remember growing up, our mom used to give us allowance, and it was a quarter, or she would put 2 quarters on the kitchen table, and one we could keep, and the other one we had to put in the collection basket. So that was like 50% tithe.
Wow.
But we did it.
Yeah.
We learned.
It's and my kids we just told them go get a job. So at age 11, my kids stealing the lawnmower to go borrowing without asking to go hustle lawn mowing jobs. And so my kids have always done very, very well financially because they earned it. And then I had then helping them to use their money. That's even more powerful than an allowance, because now they earned that money, or they think they earned.
Right.
And now they have to learn. Yeah, they have to learn how to have that relationship with money that they actually went out. They started the business, right?
Yeah.
As that gets into, how do you help a business owner? It gets harder though when you have adult children. So let's say although the kids are all grown and they're reading the book and they're like, "Oh, I screwed up. My kids are terrible stewards. Okay, I'm done." No, there's ways to witness, to take your kids along the ride as you grow in the acknowledgement of your stewardship. And it may be that they don't fully get the lesson until you're gone. But it doesn't mean don't teach the lesson. Don't have the conversations. It just means have them a little more carefully, because they're adults with their own own free will and their own path, and
have to say things a little more delicately when they're adults.
And a good dose of humility.
Yeah.
So, book, any other ways our followers can follow you?
Oh, that's a great question. So, eyeoftheneedlebook.com is the website, and they can register. There's a series of workbooks to actually put this stuff into effect, to apply them in your life. And it's, hey, make this list and take it to prayer. Make this list and take it to prayer. Right? So, but it's a very practical guide for everybody. There's one for people who are feeling called to more advanced philanthropy, and there's a workbook for business owners who are trying to figure out how to lead their businesses as a steward of the business instead of owner of the business. Also on that website, eyeoftheneedlebook.com/blog, there's a blog where I'm continuing to write because the Holy Spirit won't let me stop. So we've got at least a couple dozen articles up already.
Okay.
The latest one is about prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. I start talking about St. John Chrysostom.
My gosh.
And how those things are inextricably linked, and that prayer without fasting and almsgiving is kind of empty, which is an interesting idea. And hopefully, now the book was published 3 months ago, so I'm hoping that the Holy Spirit has plans for it, because I really am feeling called to go out and teach and to speak to anyone who'll listen.
So they can get a hold of you and ask you to do a speaking.
Absolutely. There's a place on the website where they can, check a box, say, yeah, I'd like you to come talk to my church, or to come talk to my whatever group, school,
stewardship committee.
I would love to help stewardship committees think through what their purpose is, because I think most having sat on lots of stewardship committees and been one of the people that got it wrong a lot, I think that there's an attitude shift that I think would improve the eternal effects of the tithe. And if the church receives on average less than 1% tithe right now, what if that doubled to 2? And then suddenly every church can have a school, right?
Yes.
So Yeah. So there's
even
practical benefits to it, but that can't be what it's about.
No, exactly.
Because it has to be about the individual movement of our soul and our uniting ourselves with God's heart.
And it's about the salvation of our souls.
The salvation of our soul rather than, necessarily. Do you do social media?
I do. So I'm on Facebook, I the Needle book on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm starting a YouTube channel. So with permission.
How would they find you on Instagram?
I the Needle book.
I of the Needle book?
Yeah. I the Needle was taken. So I had to book.
I Needle book? Yeah.
I the Needle book.
Great.
And Dan Hamlet. Throw my name in there for the search. And, there's links on that from the I the Needle book website. There's also links to the Facebook, Instagram, and I'm not on TikTok yet. I'm having a hard time bringing myself to do that.
I haven't done that either. So
I do have. Would you dance with me?
Sure.
Father Beeman's all over TikTok. No, I'm kidding.
I remind King David in his loincloth in front of the covenant. Maybe we could read that.
Gosh, like, let's not. I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
Embarrassed his wife too.
That is correct. Yeah. He was not pleased with that. Well, thanks for joining us, Dan, for this episode.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We'll
thank you for having me.
Keep you in our prayers and ask you to pray.
Definitely need that. So
no, thank you so much. And as in all things,
ad majorem Dei gloriam.
Dei gloriam.
Okay, thank you guys. God bless.